Oh, why hello freaks. Welcome back to Freak Week. Today, we are going to be talking about one of my most requested topics, my most requested true crime case, and it is super, super creepy. We're going to be talking today about the Black Dahlia. Now, before we get started, I do want to remind you guys that the Freak Week t-shirt is only available until Halloween. But anyway, let's go ahead and talk about the Black Dahlia. Black Dahlia, or Elizabeth Short, was a woman who was murdered in 1947, and it was a brutal murder. Her name was not Black Dahlia, clearly. Her name was Elizabeth Short. Black Dahlia was actually a nickname her friends had given her. She was called the Black Dahlia because around that time, there was a movie called The Blue Dahlia. Elizabeth Short wore a ton of black, and so her friends started calling her the Black Dahlia, kind of just, you know, as a nickname or something, or a joke. And it stuck with her, and it became the case of the Black Dahlia. But her real name is Elizabeth Short. She actually prefers to be called Beth. So Beth was actually originally from Massachusetts, and she moved to Hollywood to make it big as an actress. She wanted to find fame in Hollywood, like many people around that time, when it was really just booming and getting started. She was born on July 29th of 1924. She was born in Hyde Park, Massachusetts, and her parents' names were Cleo and Phoebe Short. Like I said, she wore black all the time. She had really pale, beautiful skin, and she was very attractive to men. Cleo, her father, he was actually a guy that built miniature golf courses. It was kind of like a newer thing back then, and he was doing really well with that. But in 1929, his depression kind of caught up with him, and he actually abandoned Beth and her 4 other siblings and their mother, and faked his suicide so that they wouldn't come after him. And he actually just moved to start a new life. One day in Beth's future, her father sent her a letter. Can you imagine getting a letter from your father that you thought committed suicide? Which, by the way, it's a lot easier to pull off a fake suicide in the 1920s than it is now. But he contacted her and admitted what happened, said he was now living in California, and apologized. So as Beth was growing up, she would write letters back and forth with her father, who for years she thought was dead. Her mother never forgave him, didn't want him to come back or anything. As she got a little bit older, her father invited her to come out and live with him. And she thought, oh, I'm gonna go to California and be a big star. She always knew she wanted to be a star of some sort. So she packed up her bags and went to California. So things for them living together were not good. He thought Beth was a freeloader, that she sucked at cleaning, that she was lazy. But as you can probably guess, he kicked her out. She started living with other people in California, and they all pretty much said that she was like freeloading off them, that she would say she'd stay for a night on their couch and then would stay way longer than that, and kind of piggybacked off of other people's fame and success, and just kind of surround herself with those type of people. She stayed with several different people. One time she stayed with a man named Mark Hansen, and a couple different women would stay there, almost like a mini Playboy mansion. But other people noticed she didn't have much of an income, and she would literally only eat and drink when other people were around. One of the men that she stayed with was a man named Robert Red Manley, or just Red Manley. Now, he claims that he and Beth never slept together. He had another wife and a child, but they did see each other quite often. The last person to see Beth was Red Manley. So on January 8th of 1947, Beth got a ride to the Biltmore Hotel in California, and Red Manley drove her there. Actually had dinner with her, and they went back to her room. He slept on the bed, and she slept in a chair because she didn't feel well, according to him. And the last he saw of her was the next day. He left, and she was in the lobby area making phone calls, and he says that's the last time he saw her. So you guys are probably asking what actually happened. So it was January 15th of 1947. There was a woman named Betty Bersinger, I'm pretty sure that's how you pronounce her name. She left her home in Los Angeles and was walking to an auto repair shop with her daughter. As they came up the street, there was a corner off of Norton and 39th, and she saw what she thought was trash, actually thought was a mannequin. And as she got closer, she realized that this was a body. She was so scared. This body was fucked up, okay? This is what makes this a Halloween story. This is scary. She had her mouth cut into, giving her like a Joker face. Now, I don't want to post these pictures in my video because I do think it is someone's body. It's a long time ago, but it's still someone's body. It's sad. I don't want to force people to see it that don't want to see it. It's not necessary for the content. It's not necessarily for this case to see it, but if you're interested, I'm gonna leave links to places that you can see it below. So anyway, her face was cut like the Joker pretty much, and then she was severed in half, really weird, and she was also drained of her blood, completely ghost pale. That's why she thought it was a mannequin, like a dissembled mannequin, because there's absolutely no blood. She was pure, like almost white. Once she realized it was a body, she grabbed her daughter and ran to a nearby house where they called 911. 911 came out and a huge crowd was around this for a while, so they covered her body. So I'll put in the pictures of that. This is her body once it's already been covered. Now, they took fingerprints and they were able to determine that this was Elizabeth Short because she looked so different from how she did originally. They tested for sperm on her body to make sure she wasn't raped because she was kind of laid out in a sexual manner. It was really odd, and they didn't find anything. So to this day, this is an unsolved murder case. They believe that she was killed somewhere else and brought there, and maybe the body was cut in half to transport it. There was no like remaining blood found on her body or in the area around her, so this was clearly done somewhere else and then conveniently dropped there for someone to find. It was like set up for someone to come across it. So Beth's father refused to identify her, so Beth's mom had to fly out and identify her body, and I just can't imagine how devastating that would have been. And the way that Beth's mom found out about this is absolutely terrible. She was contacted by a reporter who said that they needed more information on Beth because she won a beauty contest and they're trying to do a piece on her. So her mom gave all this information to them, and at the end of the call they told her the truth, that she had actually been found dead, and that's why they were contacting her. Now what's really weird is 9 days after Beth was found, a letter was sent to the police department, and it was magazine cuttings kind of cut up in all different ways, and it says, "Here is Dahlia's belongings, letter to follow." So clearly this person is trying to make sure their handwriting is not detected or anything like that, so they're using magazine clippings. It's actually really smart. And they also doused all of this in gasoline, which apparently removes like any trace of who wrote them, which I didn't know. Fun life hack. And that message also came with her belongings, and it was her birth certificate, social security number, photos that belonged to her, in an old address book. And only one other thing was sent to them. Someone eventually sent something that said, "Had my fun with the police, Black Dahlia Avenger." However, no one ever turned themselves in. So there's a couple different suspects. Suspect number one being Red Manley. He, was the last one to see her, so obviously he's going to be considered a suspect at first. But he had already returned to San Diego. Her body was found much later than when he was known to have been with her. He also passed a polygraph test. This was back in the 40s, so it'd be interesting to see now. He was actually eventually ruled not a suspect, but his life derailed after this because there was so much pressure on him. People really thought that he did it. His wife eventually had to put him into a mental hospital because he pretty much lost his mind over the whole thing. Another suspect was Joseph Dumas, I think that's how you say it. But he claimed to be blackout drunk with Elizabeth Short right before her death, just a few days before that. He actually originally confessed to killing her, which if you guys have seen a lot of my videos, that's not the first time someone's just confessed to killing someone and then it was later proven that they didn't do it. Like, there are some weird people out there, like the guy who confessed to killing JonBenet Ramsey, and they were able to determine that it wasn't him. It was just like a lunatic. And they were able to determine that Joseph did not kill her because he was clocked in at a military base that day. So he has been ruled out and ruled a false confession. There were also some random calls into the police department confessing to it, or someone who called and said police officers actually were the one who killed her, and it's all been a giant cover-up. So there's been like a lot of different theories and ideas out there over the years. Now, what's really interesting is there is a third suspect that I think could possibly have actually done this. His name is George Hodel. And the reason people think that he may have killed Elizabeth Short is because his son has gone on this huge mission to prove that his father killed Elizabeth Short. He said that as a child, they had a secret room in their house where no one was allowed to go, and he never found out what it was. I mean, George Hodel is obviously passed by now, but his son still believes that this was him. He went to medical school, so his son thinks that that's how he knew how to surgically cut a body and drain it of all of its blood. That would make a lot of sense if, as we know, H.H. Holmes was also a med student. He did all types of weird killings with people's bodies, and like, it was very obvious that someone who knew the human anatomy did it. This guy was kind of out there. He had 5 different wives and 11 children. A+. His son Steve said that he has a picture of Elizabeth Short, and he showed everyone this picture. His father had this in his possession, but when it was first examined, experts said they were 85% sure, and then it was actually re-examined recently in 2014, and now they're 95% positive that it is her. Now look at the handwriting samples. There's George's on the left and the Dahlia killer on the right. Steve Hodel thinks that they are very accurate. Handwriting specialists have not been able to come to a conclusion on this. And another really interesting thing is before he died, the police officers did suspect him of murder and he was booked. And they even hooked him up with listening devices. Now this is really weird. On the secret listening devices that they were using to spy on him, they heard him say he'd like to get a connection made in the DA's office. Now, people think that this meant that maybe he was paid off by police, but that's never been confirmed or anything. He also said, supposing I did kill the Black Dahlia, they couldn't prove it now. They can't talk to my secretary anymore because she's dead. Yeah, my secretary can't come to the phone right now.
Why? Because she's dead.
Another really interesting bit of information is Steve Hodel went back to his childhood home where, you know, his father had the secret room and where he thinks the murders could have taken place, and they went back with cadaver dogs. The dogs picked up scents of dead people like everywhere. You know, it's not like we know necessarily if that was Elizabeth's body, but maybe he was so good at this that he killed many people. He could have been a serial killer, and it could explain a lot of unsolved cases. Another interesting bit is the LA District Attorney came forward and said, based on the results of Steve's investigation, I would have no reservations about filing 2 counts of murder against George Hodel. Very interesting stuff. I think if this murder was committed today, it would have been solved. If you're interested in this case, maybe you should check out Steve's, I think, book he has. Goes probably a lot more in depth than I did about the whole George Hodel theory. But to this day, the Black Dahlia case has never been solved, and Elizabeth's killer has never been brought to justice, which is very sad. But that's it for me today, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have been enjoying Freak Week and want to see it back next year, be sure to hit the thumbs up button. If you haven't seen my other Freak Week videos, be sure to catch up, and I hope you guys are having a great day. Stay spooky, and I will see you next time. Bye.